Hi all, welcome back to my channel. I have finally gotten everything set up the way that I want as far as study materials go. I had a very specific way that I went about how I progressed through my studying. The stuff that I started with would build, and it just made the most sense to me. So I finally got that squared away so that these YouTube videos make a little bit more sense as we go through them. Today I just wanted to do a quick, just a rundown of some labs and values and things that you need to know for the Ancc Pmhnp board exam. Just keep in mind that some of these are not like exactly psych related, but they are important, and I did see some of these on my exam. So I know it's probably, you're like, I would have, specialized in FNP if I wanted to learn this. It is important. We need to know it. So let's get to it. Again, non-psych lab values to know. First, we're going to start off with diabetic criteria. And with diabetic criteria, you need to know there are two in the beginning. So our serum fasting, which is a fasting for 8 hours, is either going to be greater than or equal to 126 on more than one occasion, or we can draw a random glucose, and if you get a greater than or equal to 200 and they are having signs and symptoms of hyperglycemia, then we have met diabetic criteria. Another way to look for diabetes is our A1C. So this A1C is kind of the average of the numbers over 3 months, 90 days. So if we get an A1C back that is greater than or equal to 6.5%, boom, 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 diabetic. Our pre-diabetic range, this is where a lot of education is going to take place so that we don't get to that diabetic range. Our pre-diabetic range is 5.7% to 6.4%, which that makes sense, right? Our 6.5% means diabetic. So take a tenth off of that and we're at the 6.4%. And down to the 5.7, that would be the pre-diabetic area. So you're going to educate on diet and exercise and what the A1C is, all of that. Make sure you're educating your patients so they don't hit that 6.5 mark. And then our favorite one to see is our normal A1C. So anything less than 5.7%, we are free of the diabetes then. Let's go on to cholesterol screening. I did have this on my board exam, so just keep this in mind. Our serum lipid levels, and I will explain right from the beginning here. Let me move my little recording bubble so you can see. Hopefully that helped. Our cholesterol screening, serum lipid levels, total cholesterol. This is going to be our highest number. I went in increments of 50 to keep them in mind. So I remembered on the board exam, my total cholesterol is 200. And then I knew to subtract from there if I saw anything else. So our total cholesterol, we want less than 200. Triglycerides, and another name for this you might see is VLDL, which I believe stands for very low density lipoprotein. I believe, don't hold me to that. And we want to see less than 150. And then we're going to see our LDL, which is what most people know of as cholesterol, and we want this less than 100. Then we get into our HDL, which is our good cholesterol. So a low good cholesterol is not good. We want it to be higher because this is the good stuff. This helps with heart disease and everything. A low is less than 40. So this is where education would take place. We want to make sure we're educating our patients on healthy fats and things like that because it does help prevent heart disease. And a high HDL is greater than or equal to 60. So that would be a good thing. We have a high good cholesterol. That just a little note, if it is extremely elevated, you can look into this a little bit more or refer out to PCP or somebody else. It can mean that there are some thyroid issues, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a good thing if their HDL is a little bit high. And finally, hypertension classification. So this one always gets everybody. A normal blood pressure must have a systolic that is less than 120 and a diastolic less than 80. It is not like the ideal 120 over 80 that you hear. It must be less than 120, less than 180. That's a normal blood pressure. An elevated blood pressure is considered when the systolic is between 120 and 129, and our diastolic would remain the same at less than 80. Then we get into what we identify as hypertension. So there are two stages. Stage 1, our systolic is going to be between 130 and 139, or our diastolic is elevated between 80 and 89. And this can be an and or. So if they have both of those criteria, then that would be stage 1. Hypertension stage 2, a systolic greater than or equal to 140, or a diastolic greater than or equal to 90. So then we're hitting stage 2. That's where we get a little bit worried and usually have a medication started. But again, that's going to be mostly PCP taking care of that, but you do need to be aware of it. All right, kidney and liver labs. So I had a little trick on here. I put a light bulb so that we could remember I could give you my tip on how I remembered this for the board exam. So kidney, our BUN, it needs to be between 10 and 20. A serum creatinine needs to be between 0.5 and 1.5. And a little tip, because what I saw on the board exam was we needed to know which one was going to be the more sensitive level to look at. How I remembered was serum creatinine, S for serum, S is sensitive, serum creatinine is going to be your most sensitive. Same kind of thing for our liver. So our aspartate aminotransferase, our AST, needs to be between 8 and 33. And our alanine transferase, ALT, needs to be between 7 and 56. And just a little note, everywhere you look these up, the levels will differ a little bit. On the board exam, it's not going to give you like a trick question of like, oh, our ALT is 57. Like it won't do that. Just know the general idea because every source is a little bit different. But my tip for remembering the liver, our ALT, it has an L in it. I remembered L for liter. That is our most sensitive one. A couple other notes about kidney and liver, because this is kind of high yield on the board exam. For the BUN, keep in mind that if a person is dehydrated, that level can look elevated. So that might mean that they need to get rehydrated and have another lab drawn just to make sure we have an accurate assessment of that. Same kind of thing with the ALT and AST. If we're seeing elevation, that's usually there's a damage process or a disease. And mostly what we think of in the psych realm is a lot of times a liver damage is from alcohol use or some type of drug use or something along those lines. But again, more testing would be needed. Don't just assume anything. And our last thing we're going to go over today is our thyroid. High yield. This is huge on the exam, and we'll go into more detail on this. This is just a quick, these are things you need to know. But thyroid, just a brief, try to keep this in mind because it builds further down in our study guide. So hyperthyroid, remember overdrive. I think hyperthyroid, you're hyper overdrive. Your TSH level is going to be down. So it may seem a little contradictory, down TSH, but our T3 and T4 are either high or normal. So this is going to be our overdrive. This is when we're going to be looking at Graves' disease. They're anxious, irritable, warm, a heat intolerance, weight loss. They have the bulging eyes sometimes if it gets to that point. Just keep that in mind. This will build. Hypothyroid, remember sluggish, have no energy to do anything. This often mimics depression. This is why it's such a high yield area for us. And remember, the sluggish, hypothyroid, again, seems contradictory, but our TSH is up. And then our T3, we don't even test for that because it doesn't really do anything for us. But our T4 is normal or low. And that's where we get that sluggish feeling. So that's it for today. I just wanted to make it quick and simple. If you have any questions, I have my email listed in the summary. And again, I own a 60-acre farm. I work full time. I have a kiddo. I am busy. So if I don't get back to you right away, I will. But until then, I'll see you next time.